we are starting this journey early because it's such a massive migration and because we need to make sure that our encryption is strong and sturdy.
Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group, breaking down the new NIST post-quantum cryptography standards. OMB's Nick Polk joins the podcast to discuss what's next for federal agencies in the age of quantum. It's Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. Here are today's top headlines. U.S. intelligence agencies have accused Iran of being behind attempts to infiltrate the Trump presidential campaign and said Tehran has also tried to spy on the Biden campaign, according to a statement released Monday. The statement, which comes from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, lays bare what cybersecurity experts and national security officials have said for weeks, that Iran is conducting influence operations targeting the American public and cyber operations targeting presidential campaigns. The statement says that such activity, including thefts and disclosures, are intended to influence the U.S. election process, and that it is important to note that this approach is not new. The statement comes after several cybersecurity companies released reports that detailed Iran-linked operations, including fake news campaigns and attempts to phish a high-ranking presidential campaign official. Microsoft's Threat Analysis Center was first to publicly report on the activity, with further reporting tying those incidents to the Trump campaign. In other news, Bill Strahlin, the Pentagon Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office's first technology chief, who helped set the foundation for that nascent defense tech hub, is departing the Pentagon to return to academia, Defense Scoop has learned. In a statement shared exclusively with Defense Scoop by a spokesperson Monday morning ahead of the official announcements, CDAO leadership thanks Strahlin for, quote, his immense technical leadership over the last 2 years as he prepares to transition back to MIT Lincoln Labs at the end of the summer. To join the CDAO in early 2022, Strahlin stepped away from his role as a cyber leader and principal staff member in MIT's Biotechnology and Human Systems Division. He subsequently helped drive a range of early initiatives and projects within the Pentagon's AI accelerating organization. The CDAO has not made a selection yet for an acting CTO to replace Strahlin, but plans to do so before his departure. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, visit fedscoop.com. Last week, the National Institute of Standards and Technology released 3 new encryption standards that are designed to fortify cryptographic protections against future cyber attacks by quantum computers. There's a lot to unpack from the new standards, which are incredibly important for federal agencies as they look to secure their data and systems in the age of quantum. Nick Polk, Senior Advisor on Cybersecurity in the Office of the Federal CIO, joins the podcast to break down the significance of the new standards, how the White House is coordinating government and industry to take next steps with the standards, and what else agencies should be thinking about regarding their cybersecurity in the future. Let's go now to that interview with Nick Polk. Nick, it's been a while, but so good to see you and great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, good to see you too.
I think it was December last year. We had a event that I moderated a panel you were on with GDIT, but we were talking about the topic I think we're going to talk about today, post-quantum cryptography and, everything that's going on there. So I'm really excited to have you here and get the chance to speak with you again and kind of hear what's going on in that space.
Yeah, time flies. It's just last December now. We're here and the algorithms have been released and it's an exciting time.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. But I think the thing that, everybody's talking about is last week was Black Hat DEF CON. And it sounds like you were at DEF CON doing some work, talking to some folks and hearing about the latest in the space. So what'd you take out of that? What'd you see there? What was exciting? How was your experience?
Yeah, so it's really exciting for us to get these out. I think, some history is always interesting here, if you'll oblige me. So, encryption being ubiquitous throughout the internet and government is pretty much a new development. So, when the internet was first created, all you need to do was watch cat videos and, dancing hamsters. Not much was encrypted at all. But folks realized pretty quick that, if the internet was to become an e-commerce platform, and, now it's, one of the biggest drivers for our economy today, that we would need to develop a method to transfer secure information over an unsecure connection. that being the internet. And so that's where asymmetric encryption, which is what these standards address, started to be developed and rolled out rapidly across different parts of the internet. First to e-commerce, but then we more recently started rolling it out to pretty much everything to secure every section on the web. And so in 2014, the US government said we're going to encrypt all of our websites by default. Around that same time, most web browsing companies started listing websites that did not encrypt their data as insecure, which led to a lot of the other parts of the private sector starting to encrypt by default. And because of all these advancements, now everybody's internet experience is extremely secure. And these encryption algorithms make everything from buying plane tickets to checking your social security benefits seamless and secure. And you don't have to worry that you're giving up your data or that somebody can intercept it when it's in transit to the remote server. But of course, now it's also everywhere, and it means that it's going to require a lot of effort to migrate. So these standards represented a very long process. They started in 2016, where they spent a significant amount of time kicking the tires and opening it up to everybody, anybody who wanted to ensure that the standards and the algorithms that were represented would operate as they're supposed to, didn't have vulnerabilities that we didn't realize when they were first created, and were safe enough to be rolled out ubiquitously across the entire internet and across both public and private systems. And so it's a really cool time, a really cool advancement, and just a big accomplishment by NIST.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I mean, to give a bit more context, I think most listeners probably understand the age of quantum and sort of what PQC intends to do. But in sort of layman's terms, what's the you know the concern and why that PQC is such a big deal today?
Yeah, so quantum computers have a lot of really exciting applications in the future. They can potentially revolutionize pharmaceuticals. They can revolutionize how we look at batteries, which as folks know, that drive a Tesla, any advancement in the range of batteries would have a big impact on our ability to move to a more sustainable future. So quantum computers have a lot of great applications in that sense. But incidentally, they can also, just based on the phenomena which makes them run, break many modern forms of encryption. And so these algorithms are specifically designed to be resistant to the exact way the quantum computers can do that, which is something where we've known since 1996 that this would be possible. So there was a mathematician that created an algorithm that essentially proved this on paper. And we have now taken that algorithm and applied it to different forms of encryption and different methods, and ensured that these forms, which are lattice-based, that's the cryptographer's term, would be able to withstand being run against this algorithm. So there are two main categories, which I'll just go into quickly. So the first one allows you to interact with a computer that you will never meet. You'll never be near that computer, but you need to be able to contact it over an unsecure connection, which is the internet. Of course, the internet is by definition a whole bunch of computers that don't know each other talking to each other. And you need to be able to contact that computer and create a secure tunnel without ever meeting it. So this is this is the core of asymmetric encrypted connections, and it essentially does a really neat handshake that allows your computer and the remote computer to exchange several different keys, and then finally exchange an extremely powerful, I would call it like master key, which will provide strong encryption for the duration that you're communicating with that remote computer. So in short, what it means is that you don't need to take your iPhone to your bank in order to be able to securely bank online. You can, get a new iPhone, log into your bank account from wherever, and it'll create that secure connection. So that's really neat. The second thing that these will really do that is critical is digital signatures. So they have several different applications, but I think the most common one that folks will see is that these allow you to be confident that the person or computer that you're interacting with is who they say they are. So, like if you meet somebody in public, you can see if their face, matches what you remember them to be, or their picture or something like that. You can check their ID. So that's how you can tell if somebody's who they say they are in public. If you're going to a bank, you can, see that like they have the big Wells Fargo sign above the window. It looks legit. The people inside look like they're bank tellers, and you can make all those checks before you actually go and give them your money or do something like that. Um, but the digital signatures allow you to be sure that this other computer, this other person that you can't see, is who they say they are because they have a signature that's cryptographically verified. And because of that, it can't be copied by somebody else to impersonate them. And so that's the other big advancement here. Because, of course, it's really important for trust online that when you go to the Social Security Administration to check your benefits, you know that you're interacting with the US government and not somebody masquerading as the U.S. government.
Yeah, I mean that's such a big deal, and very important for many missions within the federal government. We have these new standards that came out this week, at least publicly. I'm sure you've known about them for a while, but there was also the White House event with some leaders in PQC. The White House convened some leaders in PQC this week. What were the takeaways from that? What did you learn? What was sort of the talk around that event about these new standards and sort of the next steps or whatever the big takeaway might have been?
Yeah, so it was a really fun event, and you never thought that you would see a White House event for the release of new encryption standards, but it was the Office of Science Technology Policy, which advised the president on, as their names suggest, science technology policy, worked very closely with NIST to plan this, and it included leaders from across the different parts of the government that are involved in this, including the Office of Management and Budget, my boss, Claire Martirana, the Office of National Cyber Director, Director Harry Coker, and included folks from NIST, and also the private sector. And so it was very widely attended, represented all parts of American society, including some international partners as well. So that was really, really neat to see. I think the main takeaways first is that everyone knows that we've never done a migration like this before. So it's going to really be a whole of government, whole of private sector, international approach. We need to do this all together, and we need to make sure that folks aren't being left behind. That we can still interact internationally. That when you take your American-made iPhone to a European country, to an Asian country, to an African country, anywhere, in a different continent, that you can still interact with different services there. So we need to make sure that we do this as a whole, a government whole private sector approach. I think that was the main takeaway. And really, our private sector partners, especially, which have government clients, have private sector clients, have international clients, are very invested in ensuring that they can do this because they want to, of course, provide secure services to all their clients. So I think that's the biggest one. I think that the second one is, of course, many people take encryption for granted. We don't see it. It's in the background of almost everything we do, but you don't really think about the fact that the connection between you and me is encrypted. You just assume that it is. I don't really check anymore that the little lock in the left-hand corner of my browser is there because I just think it's going to be there. So I think that it's important that we all continue to reiterate the importance of encryption, both to allowing e-commerce, allowing folks to interact with the government, but also to allowing Americans to be sure of their privacy. One thing that my boss Claire mentioned during her remarks I thought was very apt was that Americans shouldn't feel like they are trading the security of their data for critical government services. They need to feel that when they do interact with the government, whether it's applying for benefits or going through a TSA checkpoint, that their data will be secure both now and in the future. And that's really critical because that's the root of trust in government. And I think that the second or the third thing that we really learned was that we need to continue collaborating again with the private sector, with our international partners, share best practices, celebrate successes. Nobody will have done a migration this big before. We have migrated individual algorithms, but never entire class of algorithms. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really important that we share all of these lessons learned because we really can't. Any of us can really can't do this alone.
Yeah, and you need to be on the same page, which is, I would say, just a huge scale of a challenge, but a necessary one. I'm curious. You mentioned some of the federal services and how important it is to get the federal agencies on board and make sure that encryption is part of that, so the trusted government element is there. What's sort of the charge for federal agencies now from OMB and Claire and the Office of the Federal CIO to agencies to get movement on these standards to move to PQC?
Yeah, so I think that the main charge that Claire issued to the federal agencies and OMB has for a while now is the Greek saying "Know thyself." So even though the algorithms were only recently released, it's the federal agencies have been on a journey for 2 years now, and even more so in some cases to find out where all the encryption exists on their network and start to lay the groundwork for this migration. So, uh, really, this could be challenging in two ways. And what we talked about a lot was, first, there's encryption everywhere, as I mentioned, and some of it is invisible, some of it's visible, some of it, you know exactly where it is, some of it you don't. But of course, those areas where you can't find it are where the adversary will find it. So it's really important to know every nook and cranny of your network and where that encryption is. But also, it's important to start mapping out where the interoperability challenges are. So now we have algorithms out. Commercial vendors will start to roll them out in their products. But of course, if you just start to put them into place and see what happens, you'll start to break things. So mapping those interoperabilities and understanding where those dependencies are very important. And so one thing that Claire really pushed and that we have been pushing as an office is starting the process early, doing that inventory, ensuring that you're ready to start deploying these when they come out, as opposed to trying to figure out as you go along, which will be a losing proposition.
And I guess this. I don't want to sensationalize it, but it's often positioned as this sprint or this race to hurry up and get to post quantum because you're not sure when this is going to hit, and it's you'd rather be ready rather than and not late to the party, if you will. So, how long is this journey going to take, and what kind of time frame are we looking for agencies to get to that point where they are ready for the age of quantum?
Yeah, definitely. So, um, I think first, the good news is it's not all apocalyptic. So there's a lot of resilience built into existing asymmetric algorithms that will make them relatively resilient even to a quantum computer. And so that gives us a little bit of leeway, both in terms of a quantum computer potentially being developed before the NSM-10 deadline 2035, or the record now decrypt later problem where an adversary could hoover up large amounts of data, store it, and decrypt it later. I'll also say the other good news is that of course, since we encrypt everything now, that if you're hoovering up data, you don't know if you're getting somebody's bank account or just like sports scores. And so
Hmm.
there's we've done a lot of work to make sure that there is resilience already in our networks, and so that's the good news. Now, of course, we do, as NSM-10 recognized, need to be prepared for that ultimate day when, quantum computer is operable and or a cryptoanalytically relevant quantum computer is operable that can break encryption. We may know when that happens. We may not. We may hear rumors, but I
Hmm.
think the important thing here is that once now that NIST has released their standards, the commercial sector will start to integrate them into their products and they'll get them validated. And once they can get them validated, then agencies can start adopting them. And from that point, it really becomes a prioritization exercise. So we have really encouraged agencies to determine where their most sensitive data is, where their most critical systems are, and then prioritize those for migration first, and then start to work backwards. And so that's really going to be an iterative process, but one that we are very confident the agencies can accomplish by the 2035 deadline.
So there's a bit of time, and you give a better answer to make me feel less worried about that future. But Nick, as we sort of close out here, what else should agencies be thinking about regarding their cybersecurity as we look to the future? And what's the role of your office within OMB and the White House to get others to join into this movement, so that that whole of nation, that whole of the globe really cross international borders, as you described earlier, actually happens.
Yeah, so I think really our role here is, and one thing that my office has been really privileged to do since NSM 10 is we have led an interagency working group that consists of the encryption super friends, NIST, NSA, ONCD, CISA, several agencies, DOE, HHS. I'm probably missing DoD, a couple of other folks, but and we really just done that to continue to convene and collaborate on best practices, what we're learning, ensure that we are all aligned. And so we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to be champions for encryption on government networks and throughout all the interwebs, all the internets, because that's a position we have taken, really strongly since 2014. I think, really though, the important thing as we embark on this journey is for folks to not forget that we are starting this journey early because it's such a massive migration, and because we need to make sure that our encryption is strong and sturdy because it underpins so many things. But of course, our message has been and always will be that if a adversary wants to get into your networks, they don't need to buy a quantum computer. They can probably just exploit some known vulnerabilities or find that one system that doesn't have multi-factor authentication that's phishing resistant, and
Mhm.
use some, try to reuse some passwords and get in there. They cost, on the dark web, a couple of dollars for somebody's username and password, costs a couple of million to $1 billion for a quantum computer. I think they're going to go for the first one first. So we do encourage agencies and the private sector to keep focusing on the fundamentals. Director Easterly, my boss, Claire Martirana, Director Coker, and Newberg from NSC have all been saying it, multi-factor authentication, encryption, patching known vulnerabilities. The CISA Secure by Design pledge is a great place to start, knowing where folks should be looking now. But then, of course, as mentioned before, we do need to start preparing for this migration. And once these modules are validated and put into products, we do need to start moving deliberately towards their integration into our networks. I think just if you allow a metaphor,
Mhm.
my dad likes to get to the airport 30 minutes before the flight. My mom likes to get to the airport 4 hours before the flight. Um, you know, my dad is usually right. Usually we can get to the airport 30 minutes before and get on the plane, no problem. But, the one speed bump or the one hiccup or, the one, piece of luggage that isn't fitting into, the check bag, container means that we miss the flight. So it's a long metaphor and a long way of saying, like, don't wait until a quantum computer is here to find out that this system won't migrate or that you'll break interoperability. Really it's something we have to start now, because if we wait for too long, then, we'll be in a little bit of a mess.
Well, it's a great metaphor, and we'll have to make sure that we get your parents to listen to the episode after the shout out. But
Oh, I'm sure
Nick,
they will.
Nick, it's always a pleasure. You know this stuff as good as anyone, and you really distill it in a great way. So I appreciate your thoughts and really sharing why this is an important moment. But I'm sure there will be more to share in the future, so we look forward to that. But for now, I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Billy. It was great to be on.
For more on security in the age of quantum, visit fedscoop.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.